Vincent van Gogh is one of the most celebrated artists of all time, but his life is surrounded by myths, mysteries, and tragedies. From attempting to marry his cousin to famously cutting off his ear with the shocking realization that he probably didn't kill himself. Van Gogh's life was as intense and dramatic as his paintings. Born in 1853 in the Netherlands, Vincent van Gogh's life was anything but ordinary. Before becoming an artist, Vincent tried a variety of jobs: art dealer, preacher, and teacher, none of which brought him any success. Vincent had a tumultuous relationship with his father, Theodorus van Gogh, a strict Protestant minister. Their conflict stemmed from Vincent's unconventional behavior, refusal to conform to societal norms, and the failure to find steady employment. One significant fight occurred in 1881, while Vincent was living with his parents in Eton, Netherlands. The dispute escalated after Vincent fell deeply in love with his widowed cousin, Gogh Stricker, after meeting her the same year. She rejected him, saying, "No, never, never." Vincent didn't take it well. He relentlessly pursued her, even showing up at her house holding his hand over a candle, saying he'd keep it there until she agreed to see him. She still said no. Eventually, his father demanded he leave the family home, forcing Vincent to strike out on his own. This period marked a turning point in Vincent's life, pushing him further toward his passion for art. This story really highlights Vincent's intense and often obsessive nature, a trait that would come to define both his relationships and his art. He wasn't afraid to go to extremes, whether in love or creativity. Vincent's mother, Anna Carbentus van Gogh, is believed to have thrown away many of his early artworks created around this time period. After Vincent left his parents' home during his difficult and wandering early years as an artist, Anna reportedly discarded sketches, drawings, and paintings he had left behind. This act likely stemmed from frustration with his lack of financial success and perceived failure to follow a stable career path. From the period of 1882 through 1883, when Vincent was living in The Hague, struggling with his mental health, he formed an unusual relationship with an elderly prostitute named Sienne Hornick, a woman who was living in dire circumstances. The relationship, which is often seen as one of Vincent's darker periods, was marked by his desperate search for artistic inspiration and his attempts to understand human anatomy in an unconventional and unsettling way. Sienne was a prostitute who had fallen on hard times. She had a child who was living in poverty, and Vincent offered her help and took her into his home. The two formed a complicated, somewhat exploitative relationship. Vincent's motivations for getting involved with Sienne are debated, but it seems that he was trying to use the situation as a means to study the human form more closely. He believed that drawing the human body in different contexts was essential for improving his artistic skills, especially as he focused on creating more emotionally raw and anatomically correct depictions of the human condition. His sketches of Sienne are often seen as expressions of his inner torment, with distorted and exaggerated forms that reflect his deteriorating mental state. His drawings during this period show a sense of desperation, an attempt to capture human suffering and vulnerability, possibly as a way for him to confront his own feelings of alienation and distress. Vincent created the Potato Eaters in 1885 during his time in Nuenen, Netherlands. It was his first major painting and an ambitious attempt to portray rural life authentically. He wanted to depict the hard-working lives of peasants, emphasizing their connection to the land and their humble existence. In preparation for this, Vincent spent months studying and sketching local peasant families. He made numerous preparatory drawings and studies to capture their expressions, anatomy, and environment. His aim was to achieve raw and idealized realism, showcasing their rugged hands and weathered faces, to highlight the hardships of manual labor. The composition of the painting features a family of peasants gathered around a dimly lit table, sharing a meal of potatoes. Vincent intentionally used dark, earthy tones such as browns and greens to reflect the somber mood and the harshness of their lives. He also used a single light source, an oil lamp, to create dramatic contrast and focus attention on the scene. Vincent struggled with technique and proportions, evident in the slightly awkward anatomy of the figure. However, he considered this painting a significant accomplishment because it captured the spirit and authenticity he sought. He wanted the viewers to feel the peasants' connection to their food, grown through their own toil, as an essential part of their lives. The Potato Eaters was poorly received during Vincent's lifetime, with critics dismissing its rough style. However, the painting remains a powerful testament to his evolving artistic vision and his empathy for ordinary people. In 1885, Vincent first encountered Japanese woodblock prints, also known as ukiyo-e, while living in Antwerp and developed an intense fascination with them. His works like The Bridge in the Rain and The Plum Orchard are direct studies of Japanese woodblock prints, reinterpreted in his vibrant, expressive style. Why not come to Japan? That is to say, the equivalent of Japan, the South. There is an art of the future, and it is going to be lovely and so young. I feel it so strongly. Someday soon, he assured Theo, an artist from this generation would rise up in this lovely country and do for it what the Japanese have done for theirs. This artist would lead the revolution for which Vincent saw himself merely clearing the way. I am not sufficiently ambitious for that fame to set a match to the powder, he insisted. Vincent's letters to his brother Theo are not only a treasure trove of insight into his life and art, but also unintentionally hilarious due to Vincent's peculiar blend of self-absorption, desperation, and dry humor. Over the course of his life, Vincent wrote hundreds of letters to Theo, documenting his artistic struggles, philosophical musings, and personal woes. In the New York Times bestseller, Van Gogh, The Life, an excerpt reads, "In fact, the situation in Noonan was far worse than Theo knew. Vincent had lavished money as heedlessly as words in advocating for the potato eaters. Rent money, paint money, food money, almost all had gone to his ragged fantasy of a peasant family. Since settling his debts in April with an extra payment from Theo, Vincent had resumed buying everything he could on credit. By the end of July, the dogs were at the door again, especially the paint sellers in The Hague. These bills had been put off repeatedly. At least one of them had threatened to seize the contents of Vincent's studio, sell the lot as junk. It was all he could do to fend them off with protests and lies until the end of the month when Theo would visit Noonan again, and Vincent could plead the case face to face. All my troubles crowd together to overwhelm me. It becomes too much for me, because I can no longer look clearly into the future. I can't put it any other way, and I can't understand why I shouldn't succeed. It's my work. I've put all my heart into it. For the moment at least, seems to be a mistake. Sometimes it becomes too hard, it feels miserable against one's will. I'm only a burden to you." Vincent was deeply committed to becoming a great artist, and his letters to Theo are filled with grandiose declarations about his artistic visions and the masterpieces he was working on. He often wrote poetically about colors, techniques, and emotional depth he aimed to convey. However, these lofty proclamations almost always diverted into a request for money. Vincent lived in near constant financial instability, relying heavily on Theo, worked as an art dealer for support. Nearly every letter included a plea for funds, often with a sense of urgency. Vincent would detail how he would spend Theo's previous allowances, usually on art supplies, canvases, or even absinthe. Explain why he desperately needed more. Absinthe is a highly alcoholic and anise-flavored spirit, historically associated with artists, writers, and bohemians in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And it's a myth, it doesn't make you hallucinate. At times, Theo, fully aware of his brother's impulsive spending, sent money preemptively. This dynamic became a running theme in their correspondence, highlighting both Vincent's dependence and Theo's unwavering support. Vincent had a complicated relationship with Theo's wife, Johanna Bonger, who went by Jo. Despite being close to Theo, Vincent occasionally expressed jealousy and frustration over Theo's marriage, perceiving it as a threat to their bond. In his letters, he sometimes mocked Johanna, or insinuated that she didn't understand him or his relationship with Theo. These jabs were often delivered in Vincent's long-winded theatrical style, adding a layer of humor to his dramatic complaints. "Theo, you clearly don't know what a woman is like. God damn it. A woman must have hips, buttocks, a pelvis in which she can carry a baby." The letters are filled with moments of unintentional comedy. Vincent's intense self-focus and dramatic personality shine through in his overly detailed updates about his health, mood, and artistic process. He could pivot from discussing profound artistic philosophies to fretting about his shoes or the weather. His complaints about life's mundane inconveniences, coupled with his relentless financial requests, reveal an amusing and human side to the tormented artist. But nothing could temper or delay the inevitable explosion. They finally confronted each other. It was sparked when Vincent warned Theo about the family embarrassment that would result if his paint bills were not paid. Unable to contain the resentments that had built up through all the months of dunning arguments on behalf of the potato eaters, Theo not only rejected outright Vincent's request for extra funds. He told him he could no longer count on him on the same level of support. Indeed, he warned that his subsidies might end altogether. Bear in mind, he said gravely, that under the pressure of certain circumstances, I may feel obliged to cut the tow rope. Vincent raged in defense, re-arguing a whole summer's worth of letters. He scoffed at his brother's financial woes, saying, "In my opinion, you don't in the least belong among the rising men." Despite the humor and occasional tension, the letters are a testament to the deep bond between Vincent and Theo. Theo's unwavering financial and emotional support enabled Vincent to pursue his art, while Vincent's letters offered Theo a glimpse into his inner world. After Vincent's death, it was Theo who preserved his brother's legacy, ensuring the world would come to appreciate the artist behind those funny, heartfelt, and often chaotic letters. Vincent's former girlfriend was a prostitute named Rachel, who took her own life shortly before Vincent's arrival in Paris in 1886. When his brother Theo informed him about her death, Vincent's reaction was somewhat detached and matter-of-fact, even indifferent. His indifference to Rachel's death has often been cited as an example of his internal isolation and how much he was consumed by his own world. While it may have seemed cold or detached, believed that he was simply overwhelmed with his own personal demons, which often made it difficult for him to truly empathize or respond emotionally to the suffering of others, even those close to him. Now let's address one of the most famous incidents in art history, the ear. Popular myth says Vincent cut off his ear for a woman, but the truth is actually much stranger. In December 1888, while living in Arles, France, Vincent had a heated argument with fellow artist Paul Gauguin. "My dear comrade Gauguin, I wanted to let you know that I have just rented a 4-room house here in Arles, and that it would seem to me that if I could find another painter inclined to work in the South, and who, like myself, would be sufficiently absorbed in his work to be able to resign himself to living like a monk who goes to the brothel once a fortnight, it might be a good job. My brother would send 250 francs a month for both of us, which we would share, and you would give my brother 1 picture a month." The details are murky, but what we know is this. After the argument, Vincent mutilated his left ear and later delivered it to a local brothel and presented it to a prostitute. It's widely believed that this act was more about his deteriorating mental health and his troubled relationship with Gauguin than any romantic entanglement. Van Gogh and Gauguin had a volatile relationship, and their artistic differences often led to tension. Some even speculate that Gauguin might have been involved in the injury. The incident shows the fragility of Vincent's mental state, but also his deep passion for his art and relationships. It wasn't about unrequited love. It was a cry for help, a manifestation of his inner demons. Vincent's relationship with the psychiatrist Dr. Paul Gogh and his time in the institutions played a significant role in his later years, both in his personal life and his artistic output. Dr. Gogh, who treated Vincent during his final months at Auvers-sur-Oise in 1890, was not only a physician, but also an amateur artist and supporter of the arts. Their relationship was one of mutual respect and understanding. Gogh encouraged Vincent to continue painting as a form of therapy, believing that art could help him cope with his mental health struggles. Despite their bond, Vincent sometimes expressed mixed feelings about Gauch's ability to help him, once describing him as sicker than I am. Prior to meeting Dr. Gogh, Vincent spent time at the St. Paul de Mausel Asylum in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence in 1889. There, under the care of Dr. Théophile Péron, Vincent produced some of his most famous works, including The Starry Night. The routine and relative calm of the institution allowed him to focus intensely on his art. He painted the surrounding landscapes, the asylum's gardens, imaginative compositions inspired by his memories and emotions. It is well documented that Vincent had a habit of tasting or licking his paintbrushes, which were loaded with oil paints containing toxic substances like lead, mercury, and cadmium. Chronic exposure to these chemicals can cause neurological and psychological symptoms, such as mood swings, confusion, and irritability, which could have exacerbated Vincent's mental health struggles. When the staff at St. Paul de Moselle took away his painting supplies during periods of distress, Vincent would reportedly become deeply upset, throwing fits and sinking further into despair. Painting was his lifeline and his primary way of expressing himself. Vincent van Gogh's death in 1890 has long been attributed to suicide, but recent theories suggest otherwise. While the official story is that Vincent shot himself in a wheat field and staggered back to the inn where he was staying, dying 2 days later, some inconsistencies in the evidence raised doubts. Vincent often assured his brother that if he ever decided to end his own life, he would do it using poison. He claimed to know precisely how to administer it and even had the dosage prepared for such an event. However, Vincent had a strong aversion to guns, admitting that he was afraid of them and never owned one. Additionally, there's the question of why he would shoot himself in the abdomen, a slow and painful way to die, especially for someone as pragmatic as Vincent. Some historians now believe that he may have been accidentally shot by local teenagers who were known to carry firearms and often bully him. When Vincent van Gogh died, his brother Theo was devastated. Theo had supported Vincent throughout his turbulent life, both emotionally and financially. After Vincent's death, Theo was faced not only with the grief of losing his brother, but also with the task of preserving his legacy. In the aftermath of Vincent's passing, Theo immediately expressed concern to their mother about the fate of Vincent's works. He warned her not to throw out any more of Vincent's paintings. In his own words, he won't be making any more of them. After Vincent's death, Theo was keenly aware that without his brother to champion his art, could easily be forgotten or ignored. Theo's words not only reflected his grief, but also his belief in the lasting value of Vincent's work. Even though it had not been widely appreciated during his brother's lifetime, he recognized that Vincent's art was unique and had the potential to become highly significant, something that would only become clear in the following years. Theo's plea to preserve Vincent's paintings was prophetic. The decades after, Vincent's work would be hailed as some of the most influential and groundbreaking in the history of Western art. Van Gogh's art is a reminder that beauty can come from pain. His paintings are filled with life and energy, a stark contrast to the hardships he endured. And that's why his legacy endures, because it's a story of resilience, passion, and the triumph of creativity over adversity.